Well, there you all are, and thank you for wanting to spend your Sunday afternoon with us. Well, my name is Rick Farron. I'm up here in Boston, and wow, we are seeing amazing things take place in the Watchtower organization. We see a religion, or if you prefer, we'll call it the cult, as I do. We are seeing a cult in free fall. We are seeing a cult in life support right now. They are hemorrhaging. And we got a program on here right now. If you're a former Jehovah's Witness, or if you're a Jehovah's Witness that's looking for the exit door at the Kingdom Hall, well, my friends, you're listening to the right program. We've been doing this now for 20 years, and this is where Jehovah's Witnesses, or I should say, ex Jehovah's Witnesses, come to talk right here on the Six Screens Telenetwork. Well, let's say hello to Anne Marie. Hello, Anne Marie.
Hello, my brother. Happy 16th Sunday.
Well, I'll tell you, I can't believe how fast the days are going by here, Anne Marie. But I'm going to make a little announcement. Yeah, I'm going to make a little announcement. I'm going to make an announcement here. If anyone out there listening to the program right now would like to share their story with us today, being in the Watchtower, what was it like? What did you experience? The good and the bad and the ugly. We'll take it all. So, whatever you experience in the Watchtower, if you want to, I'll put the number up. It's not up there right now, but I'll put the number up on Facebook and YouTube. So, you'll be able to call that number if you want to get something off your chest today. Today's a perfect day to do it. So, call us up and tell us your story. So, Anne Marie, I'm going to put the number up. Say hello to the audience.
Hello, everyone. Today is 16th Sunday. Happy that you're here. And, don't feel like your story has to be something extravagant or exceptional or more terrible than anybody else's. Your story is your story. It's a personal story. And Rick has set aside this time for an hour. You don't have to talk for an hour. Every other Sunday, just to give anyone the freedom who feels like, you know what, I want to share how it was for me when I was a believing Watchtowerite, when I was faithfully serving the Watchtower, when I thought I was faithfully serving Jehovah. What happened to you? How did you feel? What made you realize that this wasn't the truth? This is your time, my love. So anytime, if you just want to share 5 minutes or one story, this show is definitely for you.
Well, it is for people getting out of the Watchtower and telling their story. And Anne Marie, we all had stories to tell. Every single person that is involved with the Watchtower comes out with a story to tell. And we, like I say, have been doing this for 20 years, and we have talked to so many people. And, there's some people that really have been really hurt by the Watchtower organization. And yet other people come out pretty much unscathed. They don't really suffer too much. But, in doing these programs for as long as we have been, Anne Marie, we do notice that some people have really been traumatized, seriously traumatized. They need deep therapy to really help them heal. They've been through so much. And I'll tell you what, to have this platform and have people be able to come on and share their story is very rewarding for them. I've had so many people say that by sharing their story and getting it off of their chest, getting it out there, it really helps them. And even medical science, Anne Marie, is finding that out today. You don't want to keep things inward. You really don't. You want to get it out and tell other people about it. Let people know. As a matter of fact, I don't know, do you watch Squawk Box at all, Anne Marie, on CNBC TV?
No.
No, you're just asking. It's a.
No, it's just every time I turn around, there's another flipping app. No.
All right. Well, Squawk Box it's a business program, but I like it. I like it. I really do. And it's on in the morning. And the reason why I even bring this, the reason why I bring it up, there's a lady on there. Her name is Becky Quick. and she's really good. We like her a lot. And what she does is she's been on Squawk Box, and about 8 years ago, she had a child, and the child suffered from a very rare disease. I forget what they call it now, but the child just wasn't. Yeah, the child just wasn't normal mentally, and it's very hard when you have a child like that, or maybe even a close family member. Somehow, some way, people like to keep it secret. They don't like to talk about it, and so she had the baby, and nobody really knew that her child had mental issues. So she wanted to come on the program, which she did the other day. And she said, I want to explain something to the audience, that I have a child that really is mentally challenged, has a lot of difficulties. And she showed pictures of the child, and Becky's husband came on as well. And for a half hour, they talked about how difficult it is and how difficult for the young girl that has these issues. And, they broke out in tears. But at the end of the program, they said they were so glad, they were so enlightened and happy to be able to bring this news and get it out and let people know. And that's the same way I feel like on this program for ex Jehovah's Witnesses. If you hold and let people know, listen, there isn't one person listening to this program today that hasn't got a story to tell, some more drastic than the others. And some of the stories you might say, well, gee, if I tell my story, people won't even believe it. But we've heard a lot of stories on here that are so unbelievable. It's like unbelievable. Yeah.
Well, my brother, we might just all want to hear it.
Yeah. Well, we're waiting for someone to want to come on and hear it. My phone is dinging here. Maybe someone wants to come on, but they're a little. Okay. No, it's not that. I get phones. My phone dings here all the time, even when I'm on the air. But anyways, I'm thinking, what are some of the most dramatic stories that I have ever heard coming up here on the six screens and doing the program for as long as I have? There's a few that really stand out, but I'll tell you what, in one of the most outstanding stories that I can remember, and in so many stories we've heard, is just kind of a recent story with Stephanie. Remember Stephanie and how she
I
came?
do.
Yeah, how she came on and talked about how she was trafficked in the Watchtower. And that was, really, it was so unbelievable. People listening in on YouTube and Facebook and on a radio network. She couldn't go on with the program. She actually got a program on the sixth screen. She did it 4 times. But she talked about how she was sex trafficked as a little girl in the Watchtower, and how her mother actually let her go with the elders, and the elders would take her to a secret place, and they would have sex with her. And nobody believed that story. And people, so her and her husband held the program, but they said, Rick, we can't go on. They're getting ridiculed so much because people didn't believe them. Yeah, people didn't believe them, Anne Marie.
That's why they don't want you to go digging around. And that's why they don't believe a girl that's been raped by some school friends and she's a slut and just, disassociating her. They want you to believe that these things just don't happen in Jehovah's organization. We want to keep Jehovah's organization clean. Well, you know what Jesus said about whitewashed graves? It's a sad thing when somebody has the courage to share the truth. And what bothers me the most is not what happened to poor Stephanie. Of course, it does bother me, but I'm actually not surprised. Is, come on, I can't believe that our family, anyone in our Six Springs family, would ridicule and say, oh, come on, just because you don't believe something, it has nothing to do with the truth. I always say reality does not come with credentials, and it doesn't care if you believe or don't believe, it just is. And what happened to that poor girl and her own mother facilitating the happening of it.
Well, what you just did to your phone is improved. Did you do something different? I hear you so much better.
No, my brother, it's a temperament temperamental phone. I think it's had its might all today.
Well, it sounds real good today. It was a little rough last night, but it sounds pretty clear today. That's good, Anne Marie. Thank you. Yeah, so we've heard it all. I'm thinking of some of the most drastic stories that I've heard here, the six screens, and I got to roll the clock back. This one really got my attention, and there's many out there as well, Anne Marie. In fact, you can probably share some in a while too. But there was a woman, I would say when we first started, probably 18 years ago, a woman called in. In fact, she called in from work. She worked at a car wash out in Seattle, Washington. And, when people call in, sometimes, I don't know if they're fibbing or they're playing games with us here at the six screens, but this woman really, really affected me. I can remember that night after the program, I couldn't believe what she said. But she said when she was a young little girl, very tiny, a toddler, when she was 2 or 3 years old, the brothers in the congregation that she was in the Kingdom Hall were taking advantage of her sexually, and they were passing her around. And she used this phrase. I'm not using the phrase. She used the phrase that she was being passed around like a football. And the brothers were having sex with her as a little toddler. Now, this is 18 years ago. Might have even been a little longer than that when we first came on the air. And to hear this story, I really, after the program, I was pacing the floor and I'm saying, are we really getting people coming in here exaggerating? Are we getting people coming to the six screens to really, show how wicked we would be by telling false stories? So I didn't even know at that time. I was even thinking, do I even want to go along with the six screens? Do I want to do this? Because some of the stories I was hearing, I'm saying, are these for real? But, we didn't know back then, 20 years ago, 19, 20 years ago, we didn't know about all the sexual abuse in the Watchtower. We weren't hearing of that. That's pretty much within the last 10 years, really. But now we know that I look back and I say, boy, these stories were true. These stories were true, Anne Marie.
No, I believe it. I've heard horrible, horrible things. But the Watchtower is known for having, well, like Bill Bowen always said, it's a pedophile paradise. And pedophiles are always in touch with other pedophiles. And they know it's so easy to get into the Watchtower organization, play the part. They're master manipulators, master con artists. They know how to smile, they know what to say, they know how to charm, and they get themselves in that position. And who's going to believe her?
Yeah, they don't believe it. It's unbelievable. In fact, it's a phrase I made up here because how do you really identify or explain something that's unbelievable? The only other explanation or cinema I can think of is it's unbelievable. It's so unbelievable it becomes unbelievable. And I'll tell you, even on your program here, ex Jehovah's Witnesses share their story of being in the Watchtower. I can remember one of the most drastic stories. In fact, I've got to put this in the columns here at Six Screens for one of the most extreme abuse stories. We have to talk, and well, maybe not totally abuse, but one of the most difficult positions that a person found themselves in is Sister Debbie Moore. Now, I mean, she's come on your program. When you hear Debbie, you say, is Debbie really telling us the truth? And we've come to realize, yes, poor Debbie has had a lot of issues, a lot of issues. And when she told her story, she had people crying. People, they wrote me and told me that's so sad. And what Debbie had to go through, Anne Marie. And and it could have happened even outside the Jehovah's Witness world. But look at everyone has problems, health issues, monetary issues, relationship issues. There's a million employment issues. There's a million issues people are faced with. But being one of Jehovah's Witnesses, it exacerbates. It it makes the issues you're facing in life 10 times worse because you don't get any encouragement. Even when Debbie came on your program and all of the things she was suffering, she didn't get any encouragement from the witnesses. They discouraged her. And then people actually commit suicide because of that. They're undergoing deep trouble in their life. And I mean, there are people that are listening to this program today that have gone to the elders. Maybe they had an issue in their life. Maybe they sinned or they had a little problem. And they go to the elders and thinking they're going to get support and help. And they're going to help me get through this difficult time in my life. And they go to the elders and all they get is a riot act. They get chastised. They get disfellowshipped. So the Watchtower organization doesn't do anything to soothe or to help with the bumps on the road that all of us experience, Anne Marie.
Oh, it's so true. Debbie's story was so bad. It took 5 shows for her to complete her story. There was a gentleman coming on.
Go ahead. Hello, Stefan. You like in a hollow chamber there? Can you? I don't know what phone you're on. He's on speaker or something.
No, so I sound terrible. You're saying you can't hear me?
We can hear you. It sounds like you're in an echo chamber and we can't understand what you're saying.
Okay. Tell you what, let me hang up and call right back.
Yeah, do it.
Please do. Are you on an earpiece or something?
He's going to call out and call back in, Anne Marie. Let's go to 630. 630, you're on with us. 603, I'm sorry, 603. Go ahead.
Hi. I remember a young lady talking about how she had been taken into the tunnels at the Brooklyn headquarters, and he was doing the automatic writing, and they were using her information to write articles. Was that, did I hear that on this show? Do you remember that?
Yes, I do, Tom. That woman's name was Raven Giuliani. And that was about 15 years ago, maybe longer. And she came on the program and talked about exactly what you said. She was taken down into the tunnels in Brooklyn, and she was an automatic writer. She was working with the demon spiritism, and she would tell the brothers what to write in Watchtower publications. That really shocked a lot of people. As a matter of fact, to the point that I was, even before she came on, I was getting calls from people to not have her come on. It just, they didn't want her to tell her story. And I don't know if these people were connected with the Watchtower or what, but they did not want that girl to tell her story. And she told a story, and I'll tell you, that was one of the most controversial programs we ever had, Tom.
No, how come we don't hear anything about that? Is it because it was so controversial, do you think?
Well, we have, I'm just going to mute somebody here. Somebody's got their line open here, and it's causing an echo. Hold on 1 second. All right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. That's better now. All right. So yeah, let me just address that, Tom. I think you're still on with us. Yeah. Okay, good. I got a lot of calls coming. I can't believe the calls coming into the 6 screens as of late. But anyways, what I wanted to say about that is we have had since then, there's been a couple of other women come on here saying that they also were used in that sense of being involved with the Watchtower and automatic writing and actually giving information to the Watchtower that it would, they weren't as believable. They weren't as believable, but I have heard this before on the 6 screens. And, when people would come on and talk about satanic ritual abuse, that's another thing that really was very controversial. See, there's 2 camps in the Watchtower. I'm just something on here. Let me check my phone lines here. There's something on here that is creating an echo. And I don't know if it's on yet. Okay, I'm just going to mute Stefan. I'm going to mute Stefan right now. All right. All right, that's better. I can hear a little better now. Yeah, let me explain to you what was going on here, Tom. Is these people coming on talking about satanic ritual abuse? What we do here at the Six Screens, we get two groups of people. There's two camps that come into the Six Screens. One camp is the believing camp, and they believe in demonic activity. Of course, they're Christian people or spiritual minded people, and they know about the occult. Then the other camp of ex-Jehovah's Witnesses are people in the camp of non-believers. So they don't believe in God, they don't believe in the devil, so they're going to challenge anything satanic. So, but we do cover both territories. We have a lot that listen in that don't believe and a lot that do. So sometimes there's some disagreement. But whenever a story like that comes up, well, a good example of that would be the subliminal imagery in the Watchtower. I always get a lot of flack on that. That that doesn't exist, Rick. You guys are making this all up. I get that all the time. And obviously, the camp that doesn't believe in the little occult images in these subliminal images in the Watchtower exist, but those that are believers do. So it creates a little bit of friction, but it's good to hear both sides of the story. But I'm glad you brought that up about Raven. That was one of our most controversial calls, Tom. Thank you. But we have had others. We we we
Thank you.
we have. Yeah, we have had others, though, like I said, come on in very similar stories about their automatic writing and involved with demonism and spiritism. Thank you. Anne, you back there with us?
Hey, right?
Yes, Pat, that's better now, Stefan. Yep.
Okay, great. I just wanted to relate a quick story. When you were talking about how you go to the elders and you get no support, way back when I was married, newly married, excited to be married, and I was probably about 4 or 5 years into the marriage, and my wife wound up having an affair with a rapper, no less. That's probably why I hate rappers to this day. And so slowly but surely our marriage disintegrated. But what I thought was interesting, these elders, the majority of them, they actually knew me from a little kid. And I was amazed at, just like you said, the lack of support. You're talking about people that have known you basically, excuse me, since the age of 3. And I never got a single shepherding call, whether they came in person or they actually picked up the phone and called. And then I noticed that I was being what I'll call soft shunned by the witnesses when I would go to the meeting. So here I am, basically overnight going from a married Jehovah's Witness family to now I'm a single parent and a single Jehovah's Witness, dragging myself and these 2 little kids to meetings. And my youngest son wasn't even walking. So that'll tell you how long ago that was. And it was like killing them just to even speak to me. Now, I hadn't done a thing wrong. There was no announcements. I could still comment and all the rest of that. And so my adoptive mother, who was how I was brought up in this cult, she would go to the elders and say, hey, are you guys ever going to call him? I'm sure he could appreciate a shepherding call. He's going through quite a bit. I mean, just put yourself in issues. Are you guys going to? And then she'd call me a week or 2 later. Hey, did the elders ever call you? And I said, no, I didn't. I never got a call. They didn't call you? I said, no. She goes, okay. And then she'd go back home. And I found out about this later, but not one person in the entire congregation, less known the elders, ever gave me any kind of an encouragement, ever gave me any kind of, hey, we know you're going through stuff. Obviously, if we can help in any way, let us know. Or, why don't you bring the babies over and you and I can go out and the guys and go out and have a beer and just enjoy life for a couple hours, or any of that kind of stuff. I mean, I was completely and entirely just sort of on my own to figure it out. And interestingly enough, years later, and I had a girlfriend and all this stuff, years later, I stopped going to meetings because it just, my body, mind, everything, nothing wanted to go to a meeting. They used to always say how you go to the meeting and no matter what you're going through, how bad you felt when you came in, when you leave, you're going to feel better. But for me, it was actually the total opposite. I felt worse going to meetings. I just couldn't do it anymore. all of a sudden I started getting these phone calls. We want to meet with you. We want to meet with you. These are the elders. These are the same elders that hadn't called me and talked to me in years. Gave me no encouragement in years. All of a sudden they want to talk to me because they heard that I had a girlfriend. So I went down into the Kingdom Hall, my first time in the Kingdom Hall in years. And we sat there, and I really just kind of blew up. I had it. And I said, I couldn't care less what you guys do to me in terms of disfellowship. And I said, I'm sure that's what you're going to do because that's your solution to everything. I said, but before you do, I said, you're going to get an earful from me. I said, and I went all the way back to when I was, 29 or whatever it was, and how my wife and all the stuff. And I was still going to meetings, and I never got one word of encouragement. I never got a shepherding call. I said, all you so-called witnesses couldn't even bring yourselves to speak, less no show any hospitality. And on top of that, you have known me basically my whole life since the age of 3. I said, it's amazing to me how you guys can't provide any kind of love, any kind of support, any kind of encouragement, any kind of anything to an active witness while you go outside and knock on doors for hours and get nobody to come in. And then the first sign of any kind of issue, the first thing you want to do is kick somebody out. I said, this isn't an organization I don't want to be a part of. I really don't care and give a damn what you guys do. And I packed up my stuff and I left because I knew I was getting so angry. I was like, if somebody says the wrong thing to me, I'm going to jump across that table and beat the living hell out of them. I was like, so it's better for me to get my stuff and leave. And they were like, well, you can't leave. We're not finished. I was like, I'm not finished. I told you at the beginning, I don't care what you do. So, of course, they disfellowshipped me. I didn't care. But it just goes back to the point that you raised. And I've talked to a lot of people over the years, and they all said the same exact story, that they got no help from these elders. Sisters that were being beaten by their husbands. Some of them were witnesses. Some of them weren't. No assistance. There's one sister that wound up in a homeless shelter. I told that story before. It was her and her 5 kids, her and 5 kids in a homeless shelter. Nobody in a congregation of 100 people opened their house in. And these stories just go on and on and on. So it really is no mystery to me why this organization is really failing. Because they're not a Christian organization. They've never been a Christian organization. They've never helped people. It's always what you can do for them, performance-based. I think you mentioned that yesterday, Rick. Performance-based organization. As soon as you can't perform, whether it's you're too old, health, whatever the case is, they don't have anything for you. So I just thought about that. That's my own personal experience when you made the statement about how this organization really doesn't help people. Thanks, Rick.
Wow, thank you for sharing that with us, Stefan. Emery, are you there with us, Emery?
Rick?
Yep.
I'm right. Okay, go ahead.
Go ahead, Susan.
Oh, I just wanted to mention to Stefan, I met him at the convention. He is such a fine person. He's such an intelligent person. Why the Watchtower would want to throw him away, I have no idea. He really brings more to the table than takes away. And it just shows how stupid this organization is. They don't care about people. They only care about how things look. If it looks good, it is good. Well, sometimes when it looks good, it isn't so good. So I'm so sorry Stefan had to go through that. But he's much better off, and I'm sure he'll continue to grow emotionally and so on because he's left the Watchtower.
Thank you so much, Susan.
Yeah, Stefan, I was wondering if you could elaborate, if it's okay with Rick and Susan. Could you elaborate on what happened to this poor sister that she ended up in a homeless shelter with her 5 children and nobody helped her?
Well, yeah, it was, I am not a gossipy person, and I really didn't associate with any witnesses in the local congregation that were gossipy. So it was my then wife. This is the second so-called theocratic Jehovah's Witness family. And she mentioned it to me one day. She said, oh, it's so terrible that the sister is having so many problems. And I said, well, what's going on? And she said, well, her husband left her. And it's a long story. She had a ton of kids. She probably had almost 9 or 10 kids, and they're all different ages, of course. But anyway, the husband left. He wasn't a witness. He left. And she had never really worked, during that whole time. She was busy raising the kids. So, of course, when he left, overnight, her situation got bad, and it got bad very quickly. And I said, and then my now ex-wife said to me, yeah, she's saying that they're going to be kicking. She had already lost her house, and she had an apartment, and the landlord was kicking her out of the apartment, but she hadn't been able to pay the rent. And so I said, well, listen, the elders, they'll take care of it, because my ex-wife is getting a little stressed about it. I said, don't worry about it. The elders will take care of it. That's what they're there for, and that's what I really believe. But I followed up, and I asked, and I found out that the elders hadn't done anything other than say maybe they gave her a list of government resources or something. I really don't know. I just know that they didn't do anything. So I then said, and this is another problem with the witnesses, I said to my ex-wife, because we had a 5-bedroom house, we could have converted another room and made a 6-bedroom. I said, listen, we don't need all the space. Tell her to come over here, and she can take 2 of these rooms. She might have to bunk with her daughter. Her sons will have to fit in some kind of way, but that's better than not having any options. But my ex-wife refused to do it. She was like, well, it's not going to be right for some other woman to be in here. People automatically, somehow in this organization, just think the worst. They go to meeting after meeting after meeting to be told everything you're supposed to be doing. But yet when it really comes down to it, they actually expect you to go and do everything you're not supposed to do. It's very strange. And so she did not want to open our house to them. And the next thing I know, they were living in a homeless shelter, because I just noticed their clothes were kind of dirty when you'd see them at the meetings. They were all wearing hand-me-downs, so they're wearing shoes. They were carrying the mic. They'd be tripping carrying the mics because they all had on shoes that were too big because everything was hand-me-down. Their hair wasn't cut. This sister, who was the mom, who was always kind of heavy-set, she had lost a tremendous amount of weight. And you can just tell when people are just down psychologically, emotionally, in every way, and physically. And I don't know exactly how long this went on, because we just kind of never saw her again. But what I found out is that she had gone to another congregation. She moved congregation. She was so angry and so hurt at the lack of support from this congregation that she wound up going to another congregation. And then even when I would see her and I was legitimately asking how she was, she just did not even want to talk to me. So that's how that is. But it never fails whenever there's an opportunity to show true love and to show true Christian support. Whenever there's an opportunity to do that, Watchtower will not do it. The local elders, maybe you'll have some good natured, people in the congregation, but as an organization, taking care of the members, just like Sister Susan just said, it is not a priority to these people at all. All they want you to do is go out and fill service, give all those hours, and go to meetings and give money. That's it. They're not there to be charitable to members on the inside and to the public on the outside.
That is so, so true. Thank you for sharing that. I have heard more stories of children or people that needed a place to stay. I had a very small 3-bedroom apartment, and I remember 2 separate occasions when a young sister just showed up at my door, and I guess they knew, but they showed up at their door. They each had 2 children, and I remember this one said, Anne-Marie, I need to stay with you a while. I'm like, okay. It didn't even occur to me to say why, or don't we have somewhere else to go, or why you come to me. They just showed up, and I guess they knew that I would take them in. And one stayed about 2.5 months, and the other one stayed about 4 months. And it's understandable that when somebody needs help, what the hey? You help. That's what you're supposed to do. I can't even imagine having my 5 children and me stuck in a homeless shelter and still managing to get to the meetings and nobody's helping. I really appreciate your sharing that, because I have heard stories of, excuse me, go ahead.
Yeah, and I'll just mention one thing very briefly. I think I mentioned this. My father was only a Jehovah's Witness just for a few years, and he left. And I never did ask, why he left, but he left. And in that time, we took in 3 individuals in our house. Now, back in those days, there was a huge stigma against disfellowship people. I mean, it's still kind of, but it was really bad then. They treated the entire family like you were fellowship. But the point that I'm making is there was this one sister. She was physically abused by her husband, and this came to our attention. And my dad told my adoptive mom, if you want her to stay here, you can put her down in the basement. You know, it's better than her being over there getting beat up. So she came and she lived with us for a number of years. This same thing happened to another sister who was also being beaten. She came here and stayed for a number, however long it was that she needed to stay. And then there was a third sister who was much older, way up in age and wheelchair bound, and she had no place to go. And so I wound up giving her my room, and I stayed in the basement, and she stayed with us until she passed. So now the point that I'm making is here's a person who is not a Jehovah's Witness, but just is a person in need, and opens up his house, but nobody in those congregations, and that was 3 different congregations, nobody in those congregations, the elders, nobody gave any kind of support to these people. That's Jehovah's Witnesses for you.
Stephen, that was wrapped up in a nutshell. It is amazing. And when you said one person is disfellowship, they treat the entire family that way. My poor children were fatherless. When I got put out of the Kingdom Hall, I told them, my children, I will take you to every meeting that you want to go. It's your choice, and I will pick you up. Well, they went faithfully for a while, but you know what? Everybody started shunning them. And if they thought I was so wicked and terrible, I would assume, being Christians, that they would at least call and ask to speak to my children, ask them if they needed anything. Are they okay? Not once, not once.
Yeah, I totally understand. It's amazing. But see, this lets us know this is not a Christian organization. And that's one of the criticisms I always heard out in the general public. They would say, oh, you Jehovah's Witnesses are not Christians. And I always think to myself, what are these people, crazy? You know, all we talk about is Christ. But yes, our teachings are not in accord with conventional Christian teachings. But more importantly, and these are things the public wouldn't know, but more importantly, we don't act like Christians. None of the things that Jesus said to do in terms of showing love, taking care of people, we don't do any of those things. So it's true. We're not they are not a Christian organization.
Hello?
Go ahead, Susan.
Okay. I was thinking about, there's a young sister in our hall. She has fibrosis. I don't know if you know what cystic fibrosis is, anyone, but the child is going to die. There is no help. So this family had nowhere to go on the weekends. So we took them in on the weekends, but the family needed help. They needed spiritual help, emotional help, physical help, you name it, because the girl was just not going to be around much longer. And we took them in, but you know what? We got no help either. And the girls ended up dying, and they did nothing. The elders did nothing. They didn't try to help the child to cope with dying. Where do you go? Where do people usually go when they know they're going to die? They usually go to their church or their minister or a priest or something. This family couldn't go to anybody, and they got no help. So it was just very sad. And I had a hard time coping with her dying too. So, and I got no help. So it just shows you how kind and wonderful that they truly are.
Yep, that's the truth. And you and Rick have helped so many people. You guys are good people, good Christians. Anybody else want to read?
Yeah, I would like to say something. I personally have experienced and seen the same thing, that when people were in need growing up, actually there were some people, and my mom was one of them, that would do whatever she could to help these people. But the actual the elders and stuff, they had no support system for people. It was weird. I never understood that. But there were always, it seemed like there was always somebody that just happened to have a very good heart, because you know, that I think Jehovah's Witnesses, most of them do have very good hearts. And so they would do what they could to help these people. But for some reason, I agree 100% that the actual, you know, they couldn't go to the elders for help. And there was nothing there for anybody when they were in need, as far as monetarily or anything. It was, I never understood that. I never really understood that, but I know that other people always stepped in and helped people. So people usually had some type of assistance.
What was your name, dear?
My name's Tom.
Oh, hi, Tom. I always want to be sure. Yeah, it's really true. When people really need help, it's like they all want to look the other way. I don't know if you guys heard the story of a 17-year-old kid that when his parents were at work, the witnesses came to his door, and he fell for the Watchtower recruiting, hook, line, and sinker. He believed in it, and when his parents found out what he was doing, studying with the witnesses, they told him they were a cult and it was not a true religion, and he needed to stop, and he refused. The witnesses told him that his parents were agents of Satan, you know, the whole schmeal. The more somebody tries to tell you you're getting involved with a cult, the more the witnesses will convince them that they're from Satan. So the parents, because they were so frustrated and they had warned him and he wouldn't stop, they threw him out of the house. And so he became homeless, and not one person offered to take him in. So he ended up living in the woods. And he said the only thing he really had was peanut butter, a jar of peanut butter, and a spoon. And yet he still kept going to the meetings. Don't know how he got there. But he said the lowest part of his life was when he realized he had lost his spoon and had to eat with his fingers. And he found out later he was trying to cope, you know, Satan's persecuting me. He believed. And then he found out that the witnesses and his congregation had had a real big get-together, big picnic, barbecue, potato salad, drinks, all kinds of great food. And he found out about it later, and he asked somebody, you know, how come nobody invited me? And he was told, oh, we didn't want to embarrass you. That is disgusting. And finally, after about a year of being homeless, living in the woods, somebody had a travel trailer on their property and said, well, you can come stay in the travel trailer. And he was so grateful. But of course, he needed to use the bathroom and take a shower because he wanted to be clean. But he'd go right back to that travel trailer. And then one day, the husband came and told him he had to leave. And he's like, what did I do? What did I do? And he said, well, my wife is very uncomfortable with you on the property while I'm at work. He said that you've been watching her and, you know, staring at her through the windows. And he's like, I would never do that. He said, well, I'm sorry, you know, I have to take care of my wife. You have to leave. And that was the end of his story. I don't know if he left or what, but to me, that was just one more example of the insane lack of love and the coldness and the not caring. It's just beyond. It's beyond my comprehension. Thank you for letting me share that. Any comments?
Marie? Anne-Marie?
Marie? Oh,
Yeah. Who's this first, the gentleman?
Oh, this is Stephan again. I just wanted to relate something I've mentioned on Six Screens before, but literally right before I quit going to meetings, we had an older African-American couple as our circuit overseer. And on their second go-round, the brother was battling cancer. We kind of found that out through the grapevine. But he was battling cancer and he passed. And within maybe a month, certainly no more than a month, the now widowed wife shows back up at our Kingdom Hall. Now, I'm in Illinois. They were not from Illinois. They were from down south somewhere. And so I was really kind of surprised, and I asked this one elder who called herself mentoring me, why was she here? They were called the Hawkins. I said, why is Sister Hawkins here? And he looked around the congregation, and then he leaned into me and quietly said, she's trying to find someone to take her in. And I said, what? I said, are you telling me that Bethel doesn't have an arrangement for a widowed circuit overseer's wife to care for her after they spent decades? And you know how it was, Anne-Marie, back in the day, those circuit overseers lived basically in suitcases. They were staying with the friends. I want to say 80s or 90s, and you correct me if I'm wrong, Anne-Marie, is when they started building little apartments, if you will, at the Kingdom Hall. But up to that point, as far as I know, they always lived out of suitcases. So you imagine you've done that basically your whole life. You forfeited going out and getting your own house. You forfeited, having kids, and you were just a full-time circuit overseer. And your husband dies of cancer, and Watchtower has nothing for you. But yeah, and then she went to our congregation for another couple meetings, and then all of a sudden, because we had a double lot, all of a sudden I saw her starting to go over to the double lot, and I assumed that that's what she was trying to do, but trying to find somebody to take care of her. So that just shows you that this coldness, this lack of empathy, this lack of support at the congregation level, is the tone for that is set all the way at the top. When you have a widowed circuit overseer's wife, and she has no place to go, and Watchtower doesn't even take her in, that shows you that coldness comes all the way from the top. And of course, we saw that recently with this announcement where they're going to be kicking out the Bethelites and don't treat Bethel as a permanent assignment. You'll only be here 5 years. So this just shows you that this organization does not take care of anybody. Why would anybody in their right mind want to be a part of this organization and want to sacrifice the years of their life and all the things they could be doing, and you will get nothing from this organization by doing that?
Well, anybody joining the Watchtower organization definitely has no idea how cold and uncaring they are. Everybody is treated as disposable. If you are not an asset to the organization, you're disposable. Susan, did you want to share a thought? Thank you for that.
I don't know if you can hear me because I sound kind of choppy. I mean, it's kind of choppy coming through, but another place where the Watchtower makes it very difficult is when there's a funeral, and they'll say, well, you can't have your funeral here. It's kind of similar to what Justin was talking about, you can't live here. There's no place for you. Well, it's the same when people die. Sometimes they say, well, you can't have your funeral here, or you can't have this part of your family here, or you can't have that relative here. They just make things very, very difficult. It's a sad, difficult time anyway, and they don't give you any support as far as, well, someday we'll see you in the new system. Hasta la bye-bye, and then you want to do something proper for these people, and they won't let you use the Kingdom Hall. So then you have to find a place to have this funeral, and they make difficult things even harder.
I personally, my mom just passed, and they actually had to have a meeting with all the elders at that Kingdom Hall to approve her having her service there. So you're right, 100%. Sometimes they just will not allow you to do that. I don't know why. I don't know what their rules are, but that is actually a thing. It has to be approved in order for her to have her service at this Kingdom Hall.
That is so messed up. What's your name, my dear?
This is Tom again. Tom.
Okay, so I thought you say this
from
one.
New Hampshire. Yeah.
What's that?
I've seen so much of the injustice. They really, honestly, growing up, I saw it. The poor people, the people that were poor, that weren't contributing to the Kingdom Hall, they were treated like dirt. They really were. There was no help for them. If they wanted help, they had to go outside and get it from, the state or whatever. But there was nothing. The witnesses that I saw it, there was never anything. Other than you could get a loan. I do remember that. I remember them actually helping somebody, but it was a loan. They had to agree to pay it back. But there was no aid for people.
Yeah, and that's usually on a personal basis, as like, it was brought out as an organization. They don't help you. They just want you to go away. You're supposed to be serving the organization. We're not here to serve you.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
That was my experience.
Well, I appreciate your sharing that. Anybody else like to chime in and share something they remember?
Hello, Anne-Marie.
Hi, who's this?
Hi, honey, it's Constance. How you doing today?
Happy to hear you. Still don't have your phone number.
Oh,
How you doing?
I'm doing well, honey. I was going to say I'm enjoying everybody's comments, and I always love Stephen. We had the opportunity to meet him too up in Boston. He's a really fine person, and we love you, Stephen. I just really want to say that Rich and I really, really love you, and your comments are always so right on. But I just wanted to say, Rich was from Massachusetts. I was from California, and Rich had lived across the street from the Kingdom Hall there, and he had told the story about there was some woman that came. Somehow she found out about the Kingdom Hall. And anyway, someone had said in the Kingdom Hall, "Oh, go over," or somebody in the community, right? Someone in the community had said, "Go over to the man across the street. He's affiliated with the Kingdom Hall." And she was a mother. She needed diapers for her baby, and she didn't have the money. So she rang the doorbell, and Rich happened to be home, and he gave her some money. And he said there was a few occasions where that happened. Word sort of spreads in the community. Anyway, and he was more than happy to help total strangers. They were not JWs. They were not relatives of JWs, but they just were people that were in need. And we know a lot of times it's women that have children. They're going through a separation or divorce or whatever the case might be. And financially, they really need the help. So the brothers had found out that Rich was being generous to these worldly people, and he was reprimanded for that. And he was told by the elders, no, don't be doing that. Don't be doing that. And, I had no clue that was happening in Massachusetts. I just know that we were told as witnesses that, you need to be able to help the widow and the child that's orphaned and be loving and Christian and help. I mean, that's where your real love comes in, is helping, especially people who are strangers, but just overall loving and helping people. And when you're in the organization long enough, I did my share to help sisters. There were a couple of, I'm not bragging, but there were two sisters who came from Sweden, and they came to visit our congregation, and they didn't have a place to stay, and I said, well, you can stay with me, and that was really fun. I enjoyed that. There was another couple, I'm not bragging, but I did. I opened up my place, helped them, and I felt really, really good about that. But then when you're in the organization long enough and you start to see the hypocrisy, that really is something that you cannot just turn away from. When my mom got critically ill, she was dying, and I was working full time up at Bechtel at the time, commuting from South San Francisco up to San Francisco, which the commute was about 20-25 minutes. You had to get up early. You had to get there early to get a parking space and be at your desk at 7:45 and all that jazz. And my mom was, she had chronic emphysema. She was on oxygen 24 hours, and then she had a stroke on top of it. And I had no support from my brothers, but, there were the witnesses. They were like my family. And when there were sisters that were like my mom's age or even younger that were like my adopted mothers, I just loved them. And I asked them if they could come over and just watch my mom for a few hours. They couldn't be bothered. They just absolutely said no. And I was so devastated by that because, they were not working. They were women that stayed home. Their children were all grown. They had all day, and yet they couldn't be bothered. And let me tell you, that was like I've said before, it was like a dagger in my heart because I adored my mom.
Yeah.
But that was a real eye-opening experience for me, Anne Marie. And I mean, really eye-opening. That's where I could see that Watchtower would preach the love on the platform, but when it really came right down to it, there was no love. And I'm telling you that it was very painful to see that, but it was a blessing in the sense that I got to see that this is no true organization, and certainly not Christian, like what Stephan says. There is no love. And Rick has even said, that's why a lot of people have left the organization. It's not because of doctrines. You got to preach, you got to live. What's that expression? You got to preach. Yeah, you got to live it, and if you don't, it's fake and it's hypocrisy. And so it was a blessing that I saw that. And like even Stephan said, his father was more of a Christian, even though he was disfellowship. He was more of a Christian than most JWs in that Kingdom Hall. I mean, I'm serious about that. I mean, if you're not going to live it, if you're not going to walk it and really teach it and live by it, you're nothing but a hypocrite. You really, really are.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
I love the topic. Thank you so much, honey. And we certainly love you very much, Anne Marie.
Oh, I love you and Dick too, and I'm so happy you came on. It is so true, and so many of us, if we think back, can hear and remember little stories, things that they saw or heard that was so unkind and so unloving. There was a study, a young, beautiful girl. She had 3 children and had a bad back injury, and she was studying with the witnesses, as sweet as could be. And she would pull up to the park in the parking lot, front door of the Kingdom Hall, and it's so stupid, and I'm one of them. We would all just watch her lug from the back of her car this heavy wooden contraption that allows you to sit and move forward so way to be in the meeting. And it was a heavy thing, and never once did anybody think to offer to carry it for her. Strong men could have done it. And she would kind of stop because she was struggling trying to get this thing out of the back of her car. And she would kind of stop and look at the brothers staring at her. And never once did anybody offer to help, including me. I'm always offering to help. It's almost like this subliminal thing, don't help anybody. And she would, lug it into the back of the hall behind the chairs and sit there through the meeting trying to take care of her kids. And I think she only came a few times, and then we never saw her again. And I'm sure it was the lack of love. In fact, she did mention to me, because I sat next to her one day during the meeting, and she said, I just don't understand how everybody can watch me struggling knowing I have a back injury, and not any of the men offered to help me. And I it just didn't register. It's like, what's wrong with my brain? Poor little thing. What a terrible thing. Anybody want to comment? And I think you guys all heard the other story I told 100 times. It was a hot, very hot day. I was in the back of the Kingdom Hall on a Sunday afternoon, horribly hot. And this disheveled, tired, sweaty young man showed up at the back of the Kingdom Hall where the doors were all open. And there was one of the brothers, they kind of watch everything. I guess they're security guards or something. And the brother went to the top of the stairs and saw the man and said, may I help you? said, oh, my car broke down about 1.5 miles away, so it was horribly hot, and he had walked all that way. And he was asking anybody he ran into, is there any place that might help me? And somebody directed him to the Kingdom Hall. Oh, they're true Christians. They'll probably help you, because that's what churches do. And he said, so I came here hoping to get some help. You know, I know nothing. And I'll never forget the look on the brother's face. He looked ashamed and he said, I'm sorry, we just don't do that kind of thing. And I'm like, I was so shocked. I thought he didn't even invite this poor man in to have a seat, to rest in the shade, offer him some water. He just said, I'm sorry, we don't do that kind of thing. And then the shock on the poor man's face, like he couldn't believe it. And you could tell he was ready to just drop from lack of water. And it was just so hot. And he is so tired walking that 1.5 miles in the heat. And then the brother looked like he felt bad, and he reached in his pocket and he had a few dollars and some change. And he said, this is all I have to give you. And the gentleman took the money, but he was so shocked. He just kept staring at the brother like he couldn't believe it. This is the church of true Christians, and they won't even offer to let me sit down and have some water? True story, because I saw with my own eyes. I remember feeling really bad. Anybody have a comment? We're just about out of time.
Yeah, Anne Marie, it's Dick. Enjoying the program a lot. I got a little DH1. You guys to know. We had a person that was disfellowshipped, and as soon as the meeting was over, he would leave. And it was really cold. It was like below zero. I remember it. And his car wouldn't start. So we popped the hood open and needed a jump start. His family would walk across the street. We'd have to use the car. So I went and got my car, and I parked it next to his, and I gave him a jump start. But that's how they are. You're disfellowshipped. We're going to torture you. We're going to be mean to you. We're going to act like you're a piece of crap. You know, there's a scripture that says, when do we see you thirsty? When did we see you hungry and feed you, thirsty and give you something to drink, hungry and give you food? Don't know where that scripture is right now, but it comes to mind. You know, that scripture is thrown out the window because they don't care about that at all. They just care about their rigid rules. They can't bend them. And if you're disfellowshipped, you know, you're the worst person in the world. And when you hang that on somebody and they have to live with it for a year or two, it absolutely destroys your self-confidence. It just destroys you. And that's the way the Watchtower is. They destroy people. And they don't want you helping a worldly person because they're no good. The only people that are decent and good and honest are Jehovah's Witnesses. And 6 Greens will tell you over the 20 years we've been on the air that there's a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses that aren't good people at all. And that goes a lot for elders too. Thank you, Anne Marie.
No, thank you.
And
I was
because-
thinking, go ahead, dear.
Right, honey, I just wanted to add one thing. I know that I'm short, short, but I was going to say, Anne Marie, when I lived up in Auburn, which is between San Francisco and Lake Tahoe, you know, it's a very beautiful place. And it was very interesting because the churches up there must have been like it was like, I'll call it a coalition. That's my term, where they all work together. Maybe like about 10, 12, 15 churches. Okay? They're not JWs at all. And, you know, because it was so beautiful up there, and the weather was so gorgeous, especially in the summertime, you'd have a big increase of homelessness. People would wash and bathe themselves in the river and stuff like that. But anyway, the point I'm trying to make is you would have these churches working together for the homeless community, because we know there's a lot of homeless in California, whether it's Southern or Northern California. And the churches would take turns. There would be a schedule, and they would be a different church. And the homeless people could come in, and they would, you know, first of all, provide a meal, a real nice meal for the homeless people. And then there would be a place for them to be able to sleep at night. And the men would sleep in one area, and the women were, and her children were totally in a different area. But this was something that the churches of Christendom did for the community. You know, Watchtower doesn't do anything of that nature. So, you know, if I were a homeless person, I would think, well, what in the heck would I want to do with God, with Watchtower? Because, you know, where is the love? Where is the love? Why would I want to worship God or be a Christian if this was to be an example of Christianity, which is what Watchtower doesn't do? But the other churches do a lot. They do a lot to help the homeless people, or when people are just in transition trying to make it. So I just wanted to say that too, Anne Marie. Thank you.
Much, Constance, and so glad that Rick brought up the scripture where Jesus said, if you did it, what did he say? It's Matthew 25:40. He said, in reply, the king would say, truly I say to you, to the extent that you did it to the least one of these my brothers, you did it to me. And that's good or bad. You can recall ourselves when we see someone who needs help, when we just do little things. My brother Rick, even though we're out on pretty much.
Yeah, one more. We got about 5 minutes, Anne Marie, and then we'll end the program and go to the news.
Rick,
Yes.
you know, we've been discussing the scripture in First Peter and in First Ephesians, and the scripture basically says, God says, "Be holy, because I am holy." You pray to God and call Him Father, but He will judge you the same way by what you do. So that's it all. Be holy, and how you act is how I'm going to judge you. So that is something that the Watchtower should really pay attention to. Do they even read those scriptures? I wonder.
Yeah, there's a thought. I was in contact with a lovely, lovely lady, ex-Jehovah's Witness, and she was a caretaker full time. She moved in with her mother and took care of her mother, her hand and foot, because she didn't want her to be in a nursing home, which is she didn't live very far away, were Jehovah's Witnesses. And she would ask them periodically, please help me. I need help. Can you come maybe sit with mom for a couple hours, maybe once a week, once every 2 weeks? And all she ever heard was, we're too busy. We have to work. We have to get in our time. I hated that phrase. I have to get in my time. And it was sad because this fellowship daughter would take her mother to every meeting, cleaning her up, dressing her, taking her to the meeting. And her mother shunned her. The whole time she was taking care of her, her mother was shunning her per Watchtower instructions. And she would get to the Kingdom Hall and everybody would greet her mother, and she would help her mother out of the car and to her seat, and everybody would ignore her. And this went on for years. And sometimes the brothers and sisters would, from the hall would just come to say hi. Of course, they expected to be served cake and coffee and so on. But you know what it was? I think that they wanted the house, because you know how it is when a person who's probably going to die has nice property. And poor fellowship daughter, after making sure everybody was comfortable, not being spoken to, she would go out and work in the garden. And, that's how she spent her time. And I couldn't believe her own blood and flesh sister and brothers would not help. Thank you so much. I didn't mean to go over time. Anybody have a very final thought, very quick comment? We need to go to Rick. Anybody?
You remind me of the years I did in care, and the witness so-called sister, she visited on a short nursing home rehab trip where Mom was coming home the next day. I had a day of respite where I could sleep. And then she says to me after Mom's home, she says, well, you're going to pay me for the day I went to the nursing home, aren't you? And she wasn't even asked to do that.
Oh my goodness.
It becomes almost ironic humor at this point, but don't let them get your house, because you know what happened in this case, and I'm in that house now, thank God.
Thank God.
And
Thank God
for my mother saying to her, depart from me, you worker of iniquity. I knew you not.
I love that. I love that
Yes.
story, Pixie. Your mom was right on. Absolutely. Well, we need to end the show, my dear brothers and sisters. I love my Six Screens family. It's been a great show. We all have later will hopefully help people wake up from this wicked, wicked Watchtower cult. I want to thank Rick, want to thank Tom, and I want to thank Stephen and Susan and Tom and Constance and Dick, and lastly, our dear Pixie. We need to go to Rick now and JW World News Sunday edition. Rick?
Well, good job, Anne Marie. A lot of people coming in on network here on Sunday. But listen, don't leave. We've got 3 more programs coming up here on the 6 screens. We've got JW World News Sunday edition, and I got news for you. They're studying today, Sunday. The Jehovah's Witnesses around the world are studying that November article in the Watchtower about Armageddon may not come in our lifetime. Witnesses are hearing that today, and wait till you hear what Jehovah's Witnesses are saying about it. Word is coming into the 6 screens, and I can't believe it, but I'm going to share it with you on JW World News coming up next. Also, we have the Christian Court at 4 o'clock. Now, don't go run into the mountains because you hear the word Christian. This is a great program. This is the only program we have on the 6 screens that is a crossover program. It's not only connecting with ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, it's connecting with the Christian world. So it's the Christian Court. We have 2 scholars that come on, and they will answer peculiar Christian questions. You might be fascinated with this program. Why don't you join us at 4 o'clock for the Christian Court right here on. And then you've got to have questions. If you were in the Watchtower and you were in it for a number of years, I mean, you got to know where your scriptures are. You got to learn some scriptures. You must have some questions on certain scriptures and the way the Watchtower interpreted them. So why don't you come in today at 5 o'clock for Jay Hess? He's got a program. He'll answer your Bible questions. So stay with us. Stay on this channel. Coming up next, though, JW World News. Thank you very much, Anne Marie, and for all those that called in.